Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Opposite the Monitor. And today we got some news about Starfield and some director addressing the criticism that people have rightfully given to Starfield. Like I said, I've given my thoughts on Starfield before. There's some, good things about it, and there's a whole host of stuff that I completely disagree with. And I guess apparently, given the fact that since I've never developed a game before, I probably shouldn't speak on it according to the director. And this is kind of what he's going to get into as well. Also got some more information about the Marvel Blade game and Arkane Lyon and what they're using to develop it as well. Got some more information. Got some GTA information as well too. So let's go ahead and get into it and give you my thoughts and opinions on it. And like I said, I'm going to do this at the beginning then, I guess, so that way I don't have to worry about it at the end. But if you like the content, make sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell for notifications, man, so you never miss a video. Let's go ahead and dive into it, though. Starfield design director calls out unfair game criticism. Don't fool yourself into thinking you know why it is the way it is. Oh, man, like a little bit of that has a little bit of like personal butthurt in there. Like that's kind of what I thought. Like that ending of that statement is more so just like, you don't know what the hell you're talking about, so don't speak on it. That's the kind of like inclination that I get when I read that. So they go on to say that Emil says an awful lot of outspoken critics are disconnected from the realities of game development. And I mean, that's true. Most game critics have never made a game as well. I mean, that goes for everybody, actually, people who are actual critics who work for publications as well as, YouTubers like me. But I mean, my thing is that the actual, given the fact that I'm an actual consumer and I've consumed a lot of Bethesda games as well as a lot of other games from a lot of other AAA developers and stuff like that. It's not like I'm 5 years old and or I'm 10 years old and I just started playing Starfield. Like Starfield is my first entry into Bethesda and gaming and stuff. I have a whole history of games from developers that came before you that, I can base my information on, and it's like, it's about having a compare and contrast scenario. So I don't necessarily I don't believe that you have to be able to make a game to actually give your thoughts and understanding and opinion on it, to be able to, critique something. Cause it's not like you're critiquing the game because you just want to, I mean, there are some people out there that just want to do it because they're an asshole. But for me personally, I critique games because I want to see developers make better games and not repeat the mistakes of other developers at other different companies. Me personally, because I love playing video games. I've been playing video games since I was 5 years old. My very first console was a Nintendo 64. My first two games were Mario 64 and Glover. If my OG console players out there, if you know what Glover is, make sure you put a comment in the comment of this video. But yeah, I don't think you need to be able to develop a game to be able to understand or have a critique or an opinion or criticize someone about the decision making of the game. But we'll go ahead and get into it though. So they kind of start off with his first, part of this Twitter thread. He just went on a long, Twitter tirade, essentially. But he goes on to say that funny how disconnected some players are from the realities of game development, and yet they speak with complete authority. Ooh, man, this is so he's trying to be you literally have no say so in what we do. You know what I'm saying? Because you don't know the ins and outs of stuff. And I mean, anybody that has a basic understanding of game development as well as how corporations function, I'm pretty sure people who have actual day jobs outside of just doing YouTube all the time or whatever, or even if you do YouTube all the time, how a corporation functions, how decisions are made that affect you as the creator or as an employee. And you may not necessarily agree with it or not, and then that affects not only you but everyone as a whole who is either engaging in the content or contributing to the company. Like, we understand how corporations work as well as we understand video games because we play a lot of them. So much so to the point to where people are inspired to become developers because they started out playing video games. It's not like you just started out as a developer and, you just have this all knowing, knowledge and information and wisdom about how game development is because you're now included into the developer slot or into the developer position now. So I mean, like, kind of like heavy handed with the high, the high horse mentality a little bit, but, goes on to say that, I can guess what it takes to make a hostess Twinkie, but I don't work in the factory. So what the hell do I really know? Not a lot. I don't need to work in a hostess Twinkie factory to know that, there's, that it's a bunch of corn syrup, sugar, and processed chemicals that go into that, as well as, it's essentially a cake with filling in it, with icing, with filling icing in it. So I don't need to, like, and 9 times out of 10, the people that work in a Hostess Twinkie factory don't even make the damn Twinkies. They just package it. You know what I'm saying? 9 times out of 10, it's a machine that made the Hostess. Actually, I think it is a machine that makes the actual Twinkie. It's an injection machine that pumps icing into the center of the cake because it's hollow in the inside. So like, there you go. I don't work in the Hostess Twinkie factory, but I know how Twinkies are made. It's just like it doesn't make any sense to even, like, this is what I said before, and I probably said it many times, but in the previous video on Starfield, you can go through my playlist. I've said this before. Sometimes developers just need to shut up. You don't need to say everything all the time. Sometimes you can just let shit die. That's just part of being an adult most of the time. You just got to know when to put your tongue in park. Essentially, you don't have to say too much. You know what I'm saying? Because when you start saying shit and you make analogies like this, you make you dig yourself in a deeper hole and you make yourself sound dumber, to be completely honest with you. Like, I don't have to work, especially living in the age of information and technology. I don't have to work somewhere to understand and know how some shit operates. I don't need to actually be a game developer to actually do my research and understand how game development works. You just have to put the time, energy, and effort into actually researching what you're passionate about. That doesn't make any sense. It's a terrible analogy to use, as well as the point that you're trying to make has a weak foundation. So like, I don't need to work in a Hostess Twinkie factory to understand, to figure out, how they make Twinkies. Just like I don't need to be a game developer to understand and know, like, to understand and know, like, what goes into development. I understand on a fundamental level that there are certain aspects of game development that are extremely difficult to do, but a lot of the times you bring that difficultness onto yourselves because you don't put in preventative measures to make sure that you're not just wasting development time. And that's one thing that he doesn't mention in this, where it's just like, there are certain instances and things where, game development ends up going downhill because of other outside factors within the company and stuff like that. You allow executives to play too much in the creative process. You allow too many cooks in the kitchen and get deviated from the actual goal or the vision of what the game is, because you just constantly allow people to throw concepts onto a board to create an ever expanding or overly ambitious title. I put air quotes, an air quoted overly ambitious title. And that's what causes the headaches in game development. And then you get upset when it's not received well because you've been working on the game for years. But it's like a lot of the stuff, if you go back, I guarantee you, if there was a timeline of events that took place on paper that we could actually visually look at the development process of Bethesda and Starfield, right? There's a lot of shit that he's probably not saying out loud that went on behind the scenes. Not probably. I know for a fact he's not saying that went on behind the scenes that he definitely won't discuss and won't contribute to this particular point that he's trying to make. You know, it's just like, you know, I want to, you know, believe what you're saying, you know what I'm saying? And don't get me wrong, like, you know, game development is hard. It's not like an easy task, but it's also something that can actually be an easy process if you allow it to, you know? But I know sometimes that those decisions are not made by developers. They're made by executives and directors such as himself. And, you know, sometimes when you have people who are in this type of mindset, who feel like they know more, I put like this, he's actively projecting his mindset of I know more than you guys. If he's doing that publicly to a bunch of people that he doesn't know, can you compare that to how he operates within the actual confines of the development studio? To probably new developers, probably some newer developers and stuff like that. I'm not like, you know, saying that he's like not like an integral person into the development, or, you know, he lacks integrity or anything like that. But I'm pretty sure that there are instances of where he's like, I know more than you, so you're going to do it the way that I say that you're going to do it. You know, and that's probably pressured behind other executives that are on his ass. So, I mean, you know, but going on though, he goes on to say that part of me really gets it when you're a consumer and spend money on things that gives you the right to complain about those things. I spend a lot of money on games every year. Sometimes it takes a lot for me to not scream into the internet's collective consciousness. I mean, like, there's nothing wrong with voicing your opinion online. There's nothing wrong with that. I mean, as long as it's like, you know, concise, precise, you know, and not a terrible take, I would want to say. But it's like, you know, typically people who give an emotional response think that their take is not a terrible take in that moment. Which I feel like this is kind of what he is, you know, what he has done at this point. But I mean, yes, as a consumer, when you purchase something, you especially, and see, here's the thing he's not talking about in this little bit, is that people purchase things. Most people don't just purchase things without any information, right? So it's like when people purchase things, it's because they were led to believe that this particular thing is going to perform in this particular way. So it's like, yes, I have every right to complain about a game not being a game that's charging me $70, as well as not performing at the level in which you marketed it as. So here's another thing too, is like, you're not also talking about what causes people to purchase these things. See, I like to kind of get to the actual catalyst, the actual crux of what gaming development, of like what it is and how it affects consumers. And then when you say things like this, you leave out the part of, okay, what actually led these people to purchase Starfield? You know, like what could have possibly happened throughout the entire course from the time that you first announced it up until this point that led that person to either pre-order the game or actually outright purchase it day one? And that's the conversation that's being left out. So that's my thing. It's like, yes, I do have the right to actually complain about something that did not perform on the level in which I was expecting it to, because my expectations are not just created out of the ether. My expectations are based upon information that's being permeated it out there, like that's been put out there for me to consume. You know what I'm saying? So it's just like, you know, it's still a crazy take. I don't agree with a lot of what he said. Some of the stuff that he does say I do agree with, but not everything. It's very much so. I think it's actually a bad take, in my opinion. And I think he's just coming from a developer standpoint, not from a not from a both sides type of standpoint, from developer and consumer, or developer and customer type of thing. And in order for you to get a clear picture of stuff, you have to come from both. You have to create a point for both sides. The most information that you can gather is information from both sides. When you only get information from one side, you lack information on the other. So it's just like, he's only coming at it from a developer standpoint, not from an actual consumer standpoint, which is why he just kind of made the little thing of like, I completely get it. Like, if you purchase a game, do you have the right to complain about it? No. If I purchase a game based on the expectations that were set by you, and then it didn't perform to what you to the expectations in which you created, then I have the right to complain. That's how that works. It doesn't work just because I bought something and now I just want to complain about it. You know what I'm saying? Like, no. Like, at some point in time, like for instance, like I can buy something and then complain about it, but at the end of the day, if it does exactly what it was marketed as, and it does exactly what the person who made it said it was going to do, I can only get upset at myself because I bought it and then now my opinion of it has changed after the fact. That is a completely different thing than someone actually creating something, telling you it's going to do this, here and that, and then you purchase it and then it doesn't do the thing that they said that it was going to do. Because there were a lot of features and stuff missing out of the game day one, as well as you're saying that it's ever expansive, but then there's walls based around each planet. You know what I'm saying? And I'm just like, yeah, like your game didn't perform on the level in which you marketed it as well as there were features and stuff missing from the game day one, and it's just like, come on, man. Like, you have to at some point be an adult and accept some sort of accountability for the type of the way in which this game released. So he goes on to say that you can dislike parts of a game, you can hate on a game entirely, but don't fool yourself into thinking you know why it is the way it is unless it's somehow documented and verified, or how it got to be that way, good or bad. I mean, it was documented. What are you talking about? Did you not release dev insiders and trailers and gameplay trailers and things like that, showing things that didn't exist in the game at release, you know what I'm saying, or have yet to even be implemented into the game? We have modders right now not even wanting to mod the game because it's because they've quote said that it's boring and bland or trash, basic, these type of descriptors. And that's what I'm saying. It's like it has been documented. It's so funny to me when people say certain things, but like hindsight is 2020, which lets me know this is more of like an emotional response, because he says things like, unless it's somehow documented and verified. It was documented and verified. We have actual verifiable information or evidence from trailers and stuff released previously of the game, showing certain things that the game actually doesn't necessarily do when you buy it. You know what I'm saying? Like, and that's what I'm saying. It's like, or people in the actual trailer or gameplay trailer saying that it's going to be a certain thing when it doesn't actually do that. And that's just my kind of thing. It's just like, man, like the more I went through this, the more I read, because I actually took my time reading through this, and I'm just like, yeah, no, that doesn't make any sense. Like I have the game. I bought the game day one. The game didn't do this. The game didn't do what you said it did in this trailer. You know what I'm saying? You said it was going to be the most ever expansive game, but then you put borders on the planets. You know what I'm saying? And stuff like that. Like, yes, you have like over 1,000 planets, but like, does that even really matter when only 100 of them are unique? 10% of them are unique. Like it's, and then you just fill all of the trailers after the dev blog or dev insider with just people just getting a bunch of potatoes or sandwiches and shit and just stacking them in a crate or stacking them in a closet. Like, you know what I'm saying? It's just like, is this what the game was actually supposed to be? Is just a bunch of people hoarding sandwiches and potatoes? Or do we get like actual, like, substantial things? And granted, like I said, like the whole like crafting mechanics, the story is great. The story is great, but then again, it's like, there's some verifiable things that we can look back at through trailers that, are not what the game was supposed to be, or not like good, but he goes on to say that chances are, unless you've made a game yourself, you don't know who made certain decisions, who did specific work, how many people were actually working, how many people were actually available to do that work. Anytime challenges face or how often you had to overcome technology itself, this one is huge. So yes, love games, buy them and play them and complain to your heart's content. It's sort of the nature of the developer/player transactional relationship. But just know that the game you're playing in some ways is in some ways a freaking miracle in and of itself. Normal people have come together to work for years for one goal, to bring you fun and happiness. So it helps to remember that in them. I mean, now you're kind of getting a little dramatic. You're getting a little dramatic at this point with this. Yes, we understand that, game development takes years, but I'm not going to also sit back and act like people are doing this for free. I'm also not going to sit back and act like they didn't know that this game was going to take years of their life to be able to develop. Everything is transactional. When you sit back and you discuss this, or you sit back and you say it's sort of the nature of the developer/player transactional relationship. Yeah, when you develop a game, you're actually having a developer and corporation transactional relationship, which is a work contract. So I'm not going to sit back and have pity for people who get paid to do what they specialize in doing. It's not like they do it for free. You're not doing it solely based on my happiness. You're doing it based on the paycheck. Well, you're doing it based on the paycheck. You're also doing it because I would assume that you yourself love video games. So let's not act like you're doing things for me or for the community. You're doing things based around the sole benefit of you, because you yourself, I would assume, love video games, as well as you're not going to do it for free. So I'm not going to sit back and have pity for that. I'm not doing that. As well as, the whole point of, and it goes back to what I was saying before with like him talking about like, critics or, gamers, consumers can't criticize because they don't know like any of the challenges they faced, or, the technology they had to overcome, things like that. It's not my job to care about that. It's not my job to care about the technology that you overcome. You have an objective to do. You have something that you need to accomplish. In order for you to get the reward that you are looking for, you have things that you have to accomplish to get that. So it's not my job as a consumer to care about that. I can acknowledge it. I know that it exists. I can acknowledge it. I know that it exists. But for me to actually have pity and care about that is a completely different conversation story. And so this is why I'm just saying, it's like, you're not coming from a consumer. You're not coming from a consumer standpoint either, which is why you say these things. And now you lack the information within this conversation to actually be able to have a coherent statement. Like, you're only saying things from this one side. I, as a consumer, know specific information, as well as the community and people like that actually, are plugged into playing the video games. But I also understand the development side of things, and understand that the game development is not easy. Development in general is not easy. I'm an actual software a software engineer. Development is not easy in general. That is a tasking job. And so, you have to have both sides of information to be able to actually, come from a very much so balanced place when you have these types of conversations. But in my opinion, man, it's just like, you as a consumer, you don't need to develop games to be able to have you don't need to develop games to be able to have a basic understanding of how games are made, as well as have an opinion or critique terrible games, or games that are mediocre, or games that are bland, games that are boring, games that are trash. You don't need to develop a game to say that hey, this game sucks. This game is worse than Elder Scrolls, or this game is worse than the previous game. Well, no, in this particular instance, Starfield is better than Fallout 76. That's for damn sure. You know, but it's just like, yeah, it's, you know, you're getting a little dramatic in that stance. But yeah, man, it's just like, let me know what you guys think, man, on, you know, those are my thoughts on Starfield and his particular, you know, stance on this and stuff. I mostly disagree with everything that he says. There's some things that I do agree with. You know, you need to have a little bit of understanding of game development, but for me, I don't need to work in a Hostess Twinkie factory to know how Hostess Twinkies are made, and I don't need to be a game developer to understand game development, as well as if games are good or not, and if I can actually critique a game for being good or not. You know, I don't need to do that. You know, I don't have to be a developer to say that, nor do I have to be a developer to understand the inner workings of it as well. To understand that there's a completely development process for a first person shooter versus a third person shooter, or a completely different development process for an RPG versus an actual military, or an RPG versus an actual narrative driven story game. Like, I don't need to actually be a developer to understand these differences. And that's kind of my point. That's kind of where I'm coming from with that. But moving on though, we got some more information. Naughty Dog kills Last of Us multiplayer for single player focus. Ooh, this sounds like they running scared. Oh man, I'm pretty sure those sales numbers didn't reflect what Sony was hoping for, with that terrible fucking story decision making. And look, that's probably going to be controversial. There's that entire storyline that divided the entire Last of Us community forever. And it's just because, you know, it's just because Neil Druckmann just wanted to do something that is just like, you know, he thinks that it was a monumental, like, revolutionary type of decision making, but the only thing you did was just piss people off. That's it. You know, like I said before, I know, you know, Joel had to die at some point, but the way in which you went about it, as well as forcing people to play as the antagonist, does not create for good storytelling at all. That's just my opinion. But they're going to say that in a new blog post, the studio confirmed the sad news. While the director confirmed that work on the multiplayer title had not been stopped completely last month, Naughty Dog states that it has made the tough decision to axe development. The studio's overly ambitious approach and lack of experience with a sustainable live service model likely resulted in this demise. Even Bungie, the studio tasked with assessing this project, is struggling with its own live service. I mean, yeah, I guess that would be part of that. That's I mean, it's believable, and I mean, it's definitely part of that, especially with the scale back in which Sony just did. They just scaled back a lot of their live service titles. Anyways, so they only have like maybe two or three of them that are being developed. I think they had like 6 in general, and they scaled those back now. But in my opinion, I think that this would not have happened if sales for The Last of Us Part 2 were actually good. If sales for The Last of Us Part 2 if sales for The Last of Us Part 2 actually were more than Ghost of Tsushima, because they both released in the same year, I think literally like a month or two apart from each other, then you would have gotten this multiplayer component by now. This multiplayer component for The Last of Us, they would have given you that. I guarantee you. And the whole excuse of it being ambitious and like overly ambitious and stuff like that, like, I think that just a way to save face. That's a way to save face. Hey, we were working on something that was gonna blow your socks off, and we just you know, we just couldn't do it. We couldn't get the live service part of it out, so we're passing the buck on to Sony and all that shit. And I'm just like, No, I don't believe that. I don't believe that. If at any point The Last of Us Part 2, given how groundbreaking the first game was and is still to this day, as well as that game came with the multiplayer component day one, The Last of Us Part 2 would have come with that if the game was successful. Sony would have made that happen. Sony would have forced that to happen. They'd been like, no, all them other single player games you working on, nah. Or what would have happened was they would have split the studio. They would have split the studio, and they would have just took one team or maybe two teams. Maybe they would have probably broken Naughty Dog down, and everyone who needed to get the foundation for the new single player IPs going would have been working on that foundation, and then you would have had all of the people who have experience in the live service multiplayer side of things would have been developing the multiplayer portion of The Last of Us Part 2. I guarantee you that, if the game would have sold well. But since the game didn't sell well, we're not gonna expend any more resources into this game because we've lost enough money on this experimental project. So now we're moving forward. Another telltale sign of this too is that I think a couple months ago, Neil Druckmann sat down to have an interview, and they asked him about The Last of Us Part 3. He didn't even want to speak on The Last of Us Part 3. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, just if you just look back at history and just see like how many times game developers who had successful games had questions or were questioned about a sequel to that successful game, and they were like, oh yeah, I mean, yeah, if the community wants it, we're gonna make it. Like, look at Insomniac. Like, look at Spider-Man and Spider-Man 2, the success of Spider-Man 2, and the success of Spider-Man and Spider-Man Morales, and stuff like that. Anytime that you ask that development company about a sequel to their game or about some sort of expansion to their game, they are always willing and leaving the door open. Always. They are always giving certain hope to that game because that game is successful. I wonder why Neil Druckmann doesn't do that for The Last of Us Part 2. I really wonder why you won't even speak on Last of Us Part 3. That's my question. Why won't you speak on it? Last of Us Part 2 was so groundbreaking and bold, and it was such an amazing game. Why won't you speak on the sequel? Why don't you sound excited? He sounds more excited for the new IP that he's working on versus the actual heavyweight franchise that he has. That doesn't make any sense. So and that's just kind of like my opinion with that. But moving on though, Naughty Dog elaborates that the project was scrapped since it would take away resources from the studio's single player titles. It confirms that multiple years of effort and a large team would be needed to support the game. Therefore, the developer chose to focus on his strengths and go back to his roots. I mean, that's a good thing, but that's a good thing if that's what the scenario actually was. But no real way to actually verify that information. I'm just taking information from the past, comparing it to the present, and then divulging my own sort of consensus to it with established information that has already been provided to us, or to me in particular. And it's just, I don't believe that. I believe if anything, Sony would have made a team to make that multiplayer portion happen, because if that game was successful, the way in which capitalism works is that you capitalize on success and you milk the cow. That's how that works. It's not going to work out that way if Sony is not confident in the project. So I mean, like, that's just, I mean, good that you're going back to your roots though. I always agree with that. Never do, if you know for a fact that you're incapable of doing something, why even try it? You know what I'm saying? Like, that it just makes sense. Appeal to your strengths, because that's what makes you money at the end of the day. But that's a good thing though, at least. But I mean, it's just, it sucks because that multiplayer could have been nice, and I guarantee you it wasn't as ambitious as they made it seem. It probably was something that probably was gonna. I mean, it definitely probably been different than the original one, but I think a lot of that would have just been in the same vein. And given the fact that it, like, they were trying to make it a live service, it wouldn't have been completely different than the original multiplayer for The Last of Us. Probably was going to be like a team deathmatch or like an objective based game. Probably with a battle pass and all that other modern shit that they like to add into those types of games. And just they 9 times out of 10, the game didn't sell well. People don't like these characters, and you probably would have had to play as Abby. You probably would have had to play as Abby and play as a whole host of other characters that people don't fucking like. So it's like, you know, how are you going to, the way in which The Last of Us 1 worked was because there were characters in that game that people attached to, that people liked. And then you got to play as them again in the multiplayer, and you're, you know, playing against other players and stuff like that. They created a whole new dynamic for the game. Now you've added in characters that people dislike, a whole host of people dislike, and then, you know, you probably was going to sit back and be like, oh, people want to play as Joel all the time or whatever. And it's like, you murdered Joel in the most, like, you know, distasteful way. And it's like, who wants to remember this game other than the people that I guess liked it? But there's a large portion of people that disliked this game because of that factor. And it's like, who wants to remember this? You know, another thing is too, is like, I feel like where are you going to go with Last of Us Part 3? Where does Ellie's story continue on? You know, you could have wrapped everything up in Last of Us Part 2, or you could have just actually scrapped Part 2, or just label Part 2 as not canon and fan fiction. That's what you should do. Label it as not canon and fan fiction, because that's what that essentially is just fan fiction. It's just a terrible game in my opinion. Terrible game in my opinion. God awful story. It doesn't like make any sense to even continue this. Just move on from it. Create new shit. Don't ever touch this unless you plan to reboot the whole franchise. In my opinion, I think given the fact that the game, the way in which the game went, don't even make a sequel to this shit. Just reboot it. Start over, or just do a whole new game based in the universe, not with these characters. Some new shit, some new characters, new people. Call it The Last of Us, and it's not based on Ellie and Joel. It's based on somebody else. Then they just existing in this universe, you know. But yeah, man, those are just my thoughts on this, man. But let me know in the comments what you guys think, if you agree, if you disagree. But moving on, though, we got some more information. Rockstar lacks resources for GTA 6 PC Day 1 launch, says former dev. I don't believe this. And one of the reasons I don't believe this is because prior to this article coming out, as well as a whole host of articles saying the same thing, because this former dev is saying this, it's another way to save face of some more grimy shit that Rockstar does, is a double dip tactic. They know that people will buy this game twice, just like GTA 5. GTA 5, granted, yes, there could be some limitations with development, because the actual variations of PC, rigs that people have, the different specs that people have, that makes development a little bit harder. But that is also something that you guys did in GTA 5, and you found out through historical research that Rockstar made a significant amount of money the second time consumers purchased the game. I actually was one of the ones that purchased GTA 5 twice. I bought GTA 5 twice on console, because I had it on PS. I think GTA 5 came out at like the end of the PS3 era, or like closer to the end of the PS3 era, and then like PS4 or whatever had dropped, and I got me a new PS4, and then they were, they dropped a new trailer saying GTA 5 is coming to PlayStation 4, so I bought GTA 5 on PS4, and then was playing it for a while then, so I bought GTA 5 twice, and then I got GTA 5 for free to just get into the RP community on Epic Game Store when that whole thing, when people were trying to guess and figure out what Epic Games like free game of the month was, and they found out it was GTA 5, and it literally crashed Epic Games server. Like, you couldn't even open up the launcher to get that shit. It was so many people on there trying to just get GTA 5 for free. So yeah, no, they understand that there's a high demand for this product, and why would I give it all to you day one? Why wouldn't I capitalize on console players first? Because that's where the most of the player base is consoles. Not everyone can afford to have both. That's just the normalcy of life within American life. Most people only either have one or the other. They don't have like multiple consoles, with expensive rigs to be able to run these games. But they go on to say that fans are still disappointed about the fact that Rockstar is skipping a PC release on day one again. Previous data revealed that this is done due to the double dip tactic, which is what I said before. But a former Rockstar developer claims the team lacks enough resources to launch a PC port on day one. I don't believe that. And I think this actual author doesn't believe that either. But they go on to say that, and his quote was, "We don't have the money, we don't have the resources, we don't have the manpower." I tend to disagree with that. You do have the manpower, given the fact that Rockstar is a very large studio. We'll get into it at the end of this. He goes on to say that York claims that if Rockstar had a larger workforce, they would have 3 distinct teams focusing on PC, PlayStation, and Xbox. However, this is not how things work because the studio lacks resources, being forced to prioritize what sells the most. He also discussed the hardware distinctions between PCs and consoles, which is what I said earlier. So it'd be difficult, but it's not impossible for them to do. And given the amount of people that work at Rockstar, shouldn't really take them that long either. He goes on to say that the developer elaborated that the hardware on every PlayStation and Xbox is identical, making it simpler to optimize and create games. However, the PC platform offers multiple combinations, requiring more time for testing and operations or optimizations. Therefore, it can be challenging to create a port in time for release, even for a studio as big as Rockstar. He goes on to say that York added the studio's begin development with the PlayStation Focus, since this platform typically drives the most sales. I mean, that makes sense. Like, it's Rockstar and it's capitalism. You want to capitalize on what is popular, what is the most effective way for me, or most optimal way for me to make the most money possible on this project. And given the budget of this game, of GTA 6, yeah, I would completely, I completely believe that part, but I disagree with the intention in which Rockstar is doing this. They're not doing this because they lack the money, they lack the funds or the resources or the manpower. They're doing this because they know they can continue to capitalize on the game regardless. We just have to drip feed each community. That's it. We just have to drip feed each community. That is all. So it's an additional part that I actually want to point out, because this actually makes, this actually kind of encapsulates what I kind of like am getting at with I don't believe this. So he goes on to say that this particular author goes on to say that while there's no denying that a PC port takes additional time, Rockstar is one of the largest studios in the industry with over 6,000 employees, mega studio. This developer is much larger than teams like id Software. The latter grew to just over 300 developers earlier this year. In the past, id Software released a polished PC version of Doom Eternal alongside console versions in 2020. Therefore, this statement appears to be a bit strange coming from a former Rockstar employee. This is what I'm saying. When you make the comparisons, and I love that he threw that comparison in here, because when you make the comparisons like that, it's very stark. Like, Rockstar substantially has more employees with more money. They generate more money from their games than id Software does, but id Software has the capabilities with less manpower, less budget, less resources, and can still develop granted, not on the scale of Grand Theft Auto, but the capabilities in which you have the budget, the manpower, and the resources to do so, they were able to do so with less people, less budget, and release their game on both console and PC. So this is what I'm saying. It's like Rockstar understands that, yes, this is possible. We can do this. We can actually have this done before the game even releases, and release it on all platforms day one. But why would we do that knowing our community? This is why I say sometimes it's a benefit for corporate or for development studios to know the people you're creating a game for. You know, and if it's just like on, you know, at that point it's just on consumers. It's just be like, you know, well, I mean, I bought it twice. The only person, if you get mad at some shit, the only person you get mad at is yourself because you bought it twice. But it's like Rockstar understands the community. They understand the player base that they're selling their product to. So it's like, no, why would I give it all up to you day one when I can drip feed you? I know you're going to buy it twice. I know you're going to buy. We're going to work on GTA 6 probably longer than we did GTA 5. Given the fact that we now have the new established GTA Plus subscription, we purchased the RP. We purchased the two most popular studios that create the RP community. So I mean, like, they're planning to make this game possibly last 2 decades. If I were to say, you know, I wouldn't expect GTA 7 within a decade. I would expect GTA 7 within 2, or like probably outside of 2 decades. This game, they're going to make this game long enough for people to purchase it multiple times. You're going to buy this multiple times. We're going to give you HD upgraded versions of the game. It runs in 4K. The new version runs in 8K now, motherfucker. Like, that's how that shit is going to play out. You purchased it when it ran in 4K, when it first released, 4K 60 or 4K 120 or whatever like that. Now we added the first person mode to PC. You gonna purchase it and we optimize it now to make it run at 8K. You don't have a monitor for 8K yet, but we made it run in 8K, so you gonna buy this game. They already talking about selling this game for $80. You know? All I'm saying is that I don't believe the intentions that Rockstar has, that this former developer is saying that they have. I don't believe that at all. So that's just my opinion on it, man. You know, let me know what you guys think. But moving on, we got some more information. Final Fantasy 16 dev team disbands, making sequels or spinoffs unlikely. I am kind of sad about this, but I'm also kind of like, you know, I'm glad, man, because like this development team was actually amazing. They put out a great product. I love Final Fantasy 16. I just bought both of the DLC content. So, you know, the Rising Tide hasn't released yet, but I'm playing through Echoes of the Fallen. And I love it. I love all of that, though. But it's just sad to kind of hear, because I want more from this development studio. But I mean, you know, I'm kind of curious to see what else he's willing to work on, though. But producer Naoki Yoshida discussed the future of the Final Fantasy franchise. The development team for Final Fantasy 16 has been disbanded, except for the main DLC team. But at least we don't envision us creating a sequel or spinoff to Final Fantasy 16. I have acclimated, I have accumulated a lot of knowledge from Final Fantasy 16. Rather than continuing with one title forever, I would like to use that knowledge to consider new challenges, such as the next title. Yoshida also let it slip that Rising Tide will be the media offering, then Echoes of the Fallen offering players around 10 hours of content. Amazing. Love it. I really want to see him work on more big name titles. I want to see him work on more RPGs. And I want to see him work on like more story driven, narrative driven RPGs like this. Because I like the way in which Final Fantasy 16 was handled. I like the way in which Final Fantasy 16 was released, as well as I like the way in which that you're offering expansions. That is the way to get me to purchase. I'll buy this. I pre-ordered Final Fantasy 16 when it first came out because I played the demo. The way in which they handled that, even the demo being released out, playing the demo, got to play into the game. Love the tone of the story. Got attached to the characters. Like everything was step by step amazing. And I want to see Naoki Yoshida make more stuff. I would love to see him make more Final Fantasy 16 sequels and stuff like that. But I mean, you know, I understand the allure to just making one-offs. It's kind of like one of my favorite animation studios is Trigger, and they never make sequels to anything. And if you don't know Trigger, they're the ones that made Cyberpunk Edge Runners and a whole host of other anime. But like, there's an allure by just making great one-offs, and maybe that's the type of vein that he wants to kind of get into. And if he can be able to master that RPG, that narrative driven RPG element in games and stuff, I would love to just see him just do a bunch of one-offs. As long as I can see his name attached to stuff like that, I would love to want to like see more from him. But I mean, yeah, it just kind of sucks that we're not going to get any more, but I mean, I definitely want to see more from him though. But yeah, man, I'm enjoying Final Fantasy 16 as we speak right now. But moving on though, we got some more information. This is the last little bit of information that I have today. Marvel's Blade Arkane Lyon confirmed to be using the Void engine again. So this was the additional information that I kind of want to bring up with Marvel's Blade. So I mean, like, with this, you know, I am excited for this, but like I said, and it goes back to, I love when studios make new engines for new games, but it seems like they're reverting back to an older engine. You know, he goes on to say that with this project still in early development, there's not much information to dive into for now, but Arkane Lyon seems to be returning to its trusty Void engine for the project. You know, Void was used to make Dishonored 2, another Dishonored game. I think it was called Dishonored the other Death End, I think. I can't remember. And then this one was also obviously to make Deathloop. Deathloop was mid, and this is by user scores, not necessarily critics. Critics are, you know, obviously critics, but you know, from big publications. But you know, it was received mid. And that's what I'm saying. It's like the one similarity between all three of those games is that they're all first person. And I'm pretty sure Blade's gonna be third person. So it's kind of gonna be interesting to see how they kind of rework that engine to function that way. You know, but they go on to say, here's the interesting part though, but they go on to say that what makes this interesting is the fact that Arkane Austin recently shifted to Unreal Engine. The infamously poor Redfall utilized Unreal Engine 4, leading many to believe that Arkane Lyon will follow suit. Arkane Austin also appeared to struggle with the engine quite a bit. Redfall initially lacked a 60 FPS mode on consoles, and performance on PC was less than stellar, to say the least. According to the reports, many of these issues were caused by the studio coming to terms with Unreal Engine's technology. If true, Arkane Lyon likely made a wise choice by using the Void engine. See, I spoke about this before. I'm not going to blame, you know, a carpenter. It's, you know, a carpenter doesn't blame his tool. Like a good carpenter doesn't blame his tools, essentially. I think that's what the saying goes. My thing is yes, there may be a learning curve with the Unreal, with using Unreal Engine, but from the information that we kind of spoke on before, that had a minor role in the decimation of that studio and that game. That studio had been gutted before the release of the game, and they just got people who they wanted to make a multiplayer game but kept hiring people that specialize in single player. And it's just like, you're making a multiplayer game, bro. What are you doing? That entire process had little to do with them using Unreal Engine 4 and more to do with directors and administration getting involved in the creative process, as well as utilizing a team that doesn't specialize in multiplayer games. That is what led to the decimation of Redfall, not them struggling to learn how to use Unreal Engine 4. So that's kind of like my thing. And it's more so just like, you know, those are two stark comparisons, in my opinion. They're too different to be able to even throw into the same sentence, because Arkane Austin had a completely different type of development process for Redfall versus Arkane Lyon with Deathloop. You know, they Arkane Lyon used the engine that they're familiar with, as well as made a game style that they're familiar with. All three of those games are first person shooters, with, you know, kind of within the assassination vein, and they all use the same engine. So, you know, that's a stark, you know, there's a difference there. But Yeah, I don't know, man. I'm hoping that, you know, Arkane Lyon doesn't make a mid game. Do know Deathloop was not received well on PC when it first released because it was buggy and broken as hell on PC. So I mean, like, you know, they say that it was well, you know, received, but that's not from what I remember. That's not what Deathloop was. Deathloop was mid, and it was trouble with a whole host of bugs, and it was broken and shit day one. And that game kind of fell off after that. So I mean, you know, hopefully they can be able to kind of turn it around and stuff. You know, they did release some concept art that I'm kind of, you know, interested in. They kind of show the concept art here in this article, but they also have some concept art here, some additional ones that I was able to find. I do like the concept art, but man, I just feel like I hope the game doesn't go with this aesthetic. For me, I you know, I want to see a lot more realism. And Deathloop kind of had this artistic style. You know, and given the fact that Blade is so dark, I don't want it to kind of come off as like PG-13 Blade, you know. This needs to be full-fledged TV mature R-rated Blade, and it needs to feel grounded in a sense. You know, and that's what I think is going to contribute to the success of this. Is just like, how can they nail the tone of the game, in my opinion. But, you know, that's it for today, man. Like, let me know what you guys thought about the topics today. Let me know if you guys agree with, you know, my thoughts on, you know, the Starfield, you know, creative director, as well as, you know, his opinions on, if you can, you know, his opinion on consumers giving their opinions on his game. Essentially, you know, let me know what you guys think, man. And I'll talk to you guys next, well, no, not next week, going on, you know, family vacation for Christmas. But the week of the 27th, I'll be back at it, man. So I hope you guys have a great holiday. Enjoy your families, and I will talk to you guys again soon. Thank you.